Wish team! Hi gang, welcome to Mike on Monday, the only West Ham show that comes out on a Monday made by a bloke called Mike, and it's just for you. Now, with no game this week, obviously international break, I thought we would take a look at how Gold and Sullivan have got on this season so far. Now, you'll remember that last March, about a year ago, there were mass demonstrations at the London Stadium when we were playing Burnley at home. I was at that game and there were people running on the pitch, loads of people singing songs, complaining about them, and the atmosphere was about as toxic as a weekend in Sherborne. It's not a great place to be at that time. Since then, things have changed quite a lot. Now, some people say the only reason they changed is because of that very demonstration, while Gold and Sullivan, especially Sullivan, went on to say, oh no, we were going to make these changes anyway, they were all lined up and it's got nothing to do with fan protests or protests in general. Now, how good or how effective protests are is a moot point. I mean, there was over 1 million people in London this very Saturday protesting against Brexit. Will anyone pay any attention to that? No. Did Gold and Sullivan pay attention to those protests? Probably, I think. I think they realised they'd pushed their money-making little goals to the extreme, and the fans had run out of patience with them in much the same way that people ran out of patience with hair metal back in the 90s. Anyway, so let's have a look at what's changed since and what we made of those changes. Now, the very obvious first thing that they did in the summer, the board did in the summer, was to bring in Manuel Pellegrini, a fabulous manager, obviously very experienced, has won the Premier League with Manchester City and been very successful throughout his career. Pellegrini, though, does have the air of one of those kind of detectives that's about to retire and has been given one last case to solve, and he's determined to do it. And I think for us at West Ham, we are the one last case for Manuel Pellegrini to resolve, and it's a tough one, let's face it. Pellegrini brought in WHUISA, who is his director of football. So my first major tick really for the board go in the bringing in of Pellegrini and WHUISA. You can only say it as WHUISA, can't you? Because let's face it, my major problem with David Sullivan was that he did everything. He owned the club, he was director of football, and as I like to call him, dictator of football. Everything went through him. Transfer dealings were done by him. He decided pretty much what players came in and came out, and constantly undermined managers. So that has changed. That is a positive that has changed. Because he is no longer out there undermining our manager, and he doesn't have say over what players come in. So I think that's a really good thing. In fact, let's face it, Pellegrini completely overruled him when he brought Anderson in, because there was no way that Sullivan was going to pay 40 million for anyone, ever. But that changed. So well done to Gold and Sullivan for giving up that little bit of power. The next thing that really irritated me about Sullivan was his constant going online and his constant social media mutterings, which were divisive, to put it mildly. David Sullivan clearly has some sort of syndrome, because if it comes into his head, it comes out of his mouth, or it goes onto social media. So he's clearly had his phone taken off him at some point, because he's gone very quiet there, and that is a major good thing. But going back to the whole thing about, because it's our next point, WHUISA and Pellegrini, going back to that, here's the thing, we also, Sullivan did give him actual money to spend. And as I said, we spent 40 million on Anderson, but we also spent about 100 million in the close season. Now for West Ham, that sounds like an astronomical amount, and it is, unless you have a look at let's take West Ham. I don't want to go about too much ancient history. Let's look at West Ham since we moved to the London Stadium. And since then, we have spent very, very little. If you look at, and I've done this in previous shows, so I'm not going to repeat it again in great detail, but if you look at what our spending was before we moved to London Stadium and after we moved to London Stadium, it actually went down. Now remember, we have gone to London Stadium because we are going to move to the next level. And largely since we moved to London Stadium, it was the next level of rubbishness. We were underinvested massively. Also, a lot of players went out, not necessarily in the summer, but in the January before. If you think of Andre Ayew, for example, there were a lot of wages freed up. We had a lot of room for improvement in the squad. So while West Ham spent 100 million, it was basically money saved by not spending very much in the previous few years. So don't be completely fooled by that big spend. Though it was a good spend, at least we did spend it. So plus and minus there for the Sullivan Gold axis. Now, one of the things that Sullivan Gold did was invent a thing called the West Ham Supporters Board. This is backed by the club and it's supposed to represent the supporters to the board of West Ham. The problem with this is there were already several quite well established, or in one case very well established, fan representative things. For example, you've now got the West Ham official supporters board, and you've got West Ham United Independent Supporters Association, known by everyone as WHUISA. The supporters board is the one approved by the club, while WHUISA is the one approved by the Premier League and are genuinely independent. If you're not a member, I recommend joining because I have joined already. Now, this is a bit of a face-off, isn't it, really? It's like the Beatles are either Stones or Oasis versus Blur, except nobody that I talk to, and let's face it, I'm on YouTube, so I talk to a lot of people about West Ham, think that the board are any good. The board one is worth the paper it's written on, or the web page that it's got on the official website. So, as the supporters board, someone called, it's more like the Beatles versus Jive Bunny, or Blur versus New Kids on the Block. Sorry, Gio, but Blur are way better than Oasis, so that's why I use them. But never mind, let's have an official face-off fight now and see who wins. Welcome to the big match-off. West Ham Supporters Board against WHUISA. Who will win? WHUISA wins. On the plus side, the club have done some work trying to bring some sense of identity. Pellegrini's brought a bit of identity to the actual playing team, and they've had a go outside of that. I thought the Billy Bond stand was a really good idea, and the whole unveiling thing was really good. And there is a little bit more of a direction going on there. Another positive is the board's backing of the West Ham ladies team. Currently, as I record this, West Ham are 7th in the FA Women's Super League and in the semi-final of the Cup. And the mere fact that they're in the Women's Super League, as it's called, is a major plus. It's the first season in the Super League. 7th out of 11 isn't quite as dramatic as 7th out of 20, but still, for the first season there, it's a real plus. Now, some of you are going, that's the ladies team, who gives one? But seriously, there are a lot of female West Ham fans, and it's great for them to have a ladies team, especially for younger girls, etc., who might want to go and emulate and play football and play for West Ham ladies. Why shouldn't they have something to aim for? We all grew up wanting to play for West Ham. Well, I didn't, because I was just rubbish at football forever. But most people do at some point if they're West Ham fans. So that's a really good thing, and well done West Ham, genuinely well done for doing that. That was a really good thing to do. Please keep it up and don't just get bored and move on. But yeah, great thing to do. Let's talk about season ticket price increases, shall we? There's loads of things to talk about here, but I'm going to focus on a couple, right? So number one, this involved the club having to communicate to the supporters, which is never a good thing. It was done really, really badly. Two, I'm going to come back to that in a second. Two, why have they, now I get the fact we haven't had a price increase since we moved stadium, but a bit like they didn't spend any money for the first few seasons, they would never ever have even thought about it, so never have got away with increasing the price before, because people were so really pissed off about leaving the Boleyn and going to London Stadium, and two, because the football on offer was pretty terrible. Now, this idea that they're putting a price increase in because they have to pay for last summer's spend is quite laughable, because I've already explained that we underspent for the few previous seasons, which is why we spent so much money last season. Three, the actual amount of money this will bring in is not much. I mean, really, it's pence compared to what the TV revenue is that comes in. Now, they're saying they've got a financial black hole. They've said this surreptitiously through Claret and Hugh, which is something I like, but it is still the mouthpiece of the club to an extent. I'm not saying go and use them. We're visiting. I write for Claret and Hugh from time to time, and I still think they do some good stuff, right? But if it's been leaked through Claret and Hugh, it's from Sullivan, yeah? I don't really buy that. What it has done, and it's more the way they've done it as well as the price increase. Now, I get totally that it's still a very cheap season ticket for some people, but for some people it's astronomical. I'm going to use one of our viewers from last week's show left a comment in the and you can do the same, by the way, comments below in the YouTube bit, feel free to do so. And this is what he said. This is from Max Hamster, and I'm reading from the screen here. And this is told me I can use his name and use him example. So here we go. I am fuming. Steam is coming out of my ears. After our last great season at Boleyn, I was talked into taking a 3-year contract in Club London at £2,000 per season. Ouch. I've received the renewal today. It's for another 3 years, and they've increased the price by 20% to 2,400, and the renewal date is the 17th of April. What planet are they on? Now, I'm just going to interject here. That was, for me, one of the appalling things about this is the short amount of space of time people had to come up with the money to renew. Now, they have since extended the renewal date, I think, to the end of May, but the damage is done. That ill feeling's there, and once again, they've not thought it through. It's just, give us your money now. Oh, all right, give us your money a bit later then. But it's still, the damage is done. They have pissed people off. Back to Max Hamster. Quote again. They promise so much and give so little. I will not renew, and they will not offer, this is the important bit, I will not renew, and they will not offer any normal season ticket instead. I have to go on the waiting list. What a joke. And then he adds, Leyton Orient, here I come. So Max there didn't want to renew because it's 2,400 and he's tied in for 3 seasons, but they won't let him change it for a normal season ticket. And he therefore has to go on the waiting list, the mythical 50,000 people waiting list. Yeah, I know, but that is pretty shocking for a long-standing West Ham supporter who has already spent a lot of money at the club and with the club and supported them through thick and thin. And it's kind of typical to their attitude to supporters, and this is one of my major failings with Garden Sullivan. And it goes back to the whole WHUISA versus the official supporters book thing. They just do not they do not communicate with them, communicate with supporters well, they don't listen to supporters, and they don't take on board how important supporters are to the club, I don't think, other than revenue, and that's what they're really interested in. What do you think? Think I'm being harsh here? I'm trying to be balanced here, you know, but if you think I'm being harsh, do leave comments below, let me know what you think. That's what this show's all about. But that's enough about me moving on. Let's see what another long-standing West Ham fan makes of all this. Let's ask West Ham man, mate, what do you make of it all?
West Ham, 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 Hammers.
And now my favourite part of the show, where I get to answer some of the questions you've asked in the comments below of our Twitter or Facebook. Let's have a look what you've got for us this week. Thanks once again for all your questions. Don't forget you can leave questions below for me, and I will try and answer them. Or you can contact me on Twitter at WHUMike, or get hold of me on Facebook under my own name, Mike Monero, which a lot of people have been doing recently. Great to have you on board, guys. And do let me know what you'd like me to answer. So, starting off from last week's catch up from last week's show, where I mentioned doing an all-time, your suggestions for an all-time worst West Ham team. Boy, did you have a lot. Seems specifically fullbacks and strikers, but I had a go, and we've got for you here from your many suggestions an all-time worst team. So let's have a look at it. We've got in goal, I don't think there's any dispute. Now, there were a number of contenders for goalkeeper, but I've gone with my favourite ever worst ever goalkeeper, which has to be Alan McKnight, or as he's also known, Alan McNightmare, or indeed Alan McShite. And he was bad. We got back four of Arbeloa, a very common person put forward there. Roger the Relegator Johnson, Colin Foster, who I remember as being specifically shit, and Razavan Roland Rat. So I think it is the back four from hell. In midfield, pushing it slightly by putting Savio, a guy who went on to fake his own kidnapping, in midfield. Joey Bouchon, remember him, the guy who lasted 58 days before leaving because he was homesick for Oxford? And of course, Lewis Boamorte, a man who managed only 2 goals in 90 appearances as a attacking midfielder. Well done there, Lewis Boamorte. Up front, honestly, there are so many to choose from. I mean, how many rubbish strikers have we had? I've gone with a 4-3-3 formation so I can pack as many strikers as I can into this team. I think we had to go for Benny the Belly McCarthy, a guy so overweight, it wasn't even funny, he was fat and iron. Simone, where's the goal? Zaza, and of course everyone's favourite man in a caravan, Marco Boogers. Honourable mentions subs, especially strikers Mido and David Kelly are my favourites. Modibu Maega, the man who clearly did not understand the offside rule. Also, Lionel Scolari would definitely make the bench, and John Pantsil, the word pants is in his name as well, which just about summed him up. And such a goalkeeper, Stephen Second Coming Bywater, a player who was always going to be the next big thing, but never actually was. So there you go for that one. Let me know if you've got any to add. I'm always pleased to hear from them. But talking of all-time 11s, I got a great tweet through, and last week's show, someone asked me if there was a god, and I brought that up, and I also brought up the all-time worst 11, and that led Gershan Martinez to get hold of me via Twitter. And his dad, and I love the way his dad's on it because he's clearly not, his dad's not onto it himself, has come up with an all-time ecclesiastical 11 for West Ham. And I'm going to put it on the screen now because there are some clever plays with spelling. And he's come up with Mervyn Day in goal, Angelo Ogbonna, Declan Rice, Jose Font and Christian Daly at the back. Now you've probably already worked out what he means is a religious all-time West Ham starting 11. In midfield he's got Victor Moses, Ian Bishop and Isle Berkovic. Isle spelled like a churchyard, very well done there. And of course David Cross and Andy Carroll and Paul Goddard up front. That team does have a hope and a prayer of winning something. So thanks so much for that, Gershon Martinez. Hammer Down Under, I'm assuming you're Australia, Hammer Down Under, asks why do men have nipples and are they more useful than Anderson and Arnautovic? Now, men have nipples because men and women are built from the same genetic blueprint and in fact exist before they become men or women when they are first created as embryos and then go on to form the chromosomes to become men or women, so hence they both have nipples because they're there kind of from the start. My biggest disappointment with Anderson, apart from the fact that he will disappear for weeks on end and just sort of be there, is as an attacking force. By the way, he is 8th highest in the Premier League for tackles. Did you know that? So he does work. It's just the fact that he's there to attack and quite often just doesn't do anything. But when he does do stuff, he's really worth having. My biggest disappointment with Anderson is he's called Felipe Anderson. I want a Brazilian with one name. So can we just call him Phil from now on? We've got Fred at Man U. Can we just have Phil? And that'll make my day. Just have him as Phil. Arnautovic, look, I suspect we're going to drop him off in China when we go for the pre-season tour there next season, because he clearly is going. I think the deal's done. I think when he was going to go, they've said to him, look, we can't replace you. We'll do a deal so you go in the summer. And I think that explains quite a lot about Arnie's lack of doing anything when he's on the pitch. And I really strongly suspect we play Everton next week that he will be on the bench again and Chicharito will be back in, given Chicharito's excellent substitute performance in the last game. So thanks very much, Hammer Down Under, for that. Forever Blowing Bubbles asks, thanks Forever Blowing Bubbles, do I believe in aliens? Yes, I have seen Aliens, and it was a pretty good film. Not as good as the film it followed up, which was the rather brilliant Alien, but Aliens does exist. I have seen it. Not a bad film. Thanks for that, Forever Blowing Bubbles. Next question comes from Ryan B. And he, not Ryan A or Ryan C, Ryan B often contributes here. And he asked, what do you think of our chance of being Everton? Ryan, like everyone else, I would say they're high if the actual West Ham team that can be bothered turns up. If the team that lets Everton play have the first half to themselves and can't be bothered to play until later in the game, then Everton will build up ahead. They're good enough to damage us and put themselves 2 or 3 in front, and we'll have to try and come from behind. If we actually turn up and can be bothered from the word go, I think we've got the chops to beat them. They've got some good players though, and I think it'll be a good game, and I'm really interested in seeing how it turns out. That's it for this week, guys. I will be back with the show next Monday after the Everton game. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to both Hammer's Chat channels, and enjoy the rest of the week. And do leave any comments you've got for us below, and ask any questions, etc, etc. Until next week, people, come on you Irons, and I can't wait to see you next Monday, and hopefully we'll be celebrating a win against Everton. Bye.